third grade. It's time to read James and the Giant Peach. We are in my hammock room again, right outside of my house. One thing, however, I have a very loud talking neighbor, and he's on the phone. Do you hear him? So I'm going to wait for Marcus, my neighbor, to finish up his conversation, and then I'm going to start reading to you. So loud. All right. Speak to you soon. I'm back. And I'm in my living room now because after the phone call, he started hammering things. Like, I know that it's beautiful outside, but put your hammer away, dude. We got James and the Giant Peach to read. So I just decided to come back inside. I'll go out later, whatever. Chapter 5. And remember, chapter 4, we met that kind of creepy old man who gave James those little crocodile tongues that were glowy. And so now he ran inside, and the old man just kind of like backed up into the bushes. So now we're in chapter 5. The next moment, James was running back toward the house as fast as he could go. He would do it all in the kitchen, he told himself, if only he could get in there without Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker seeing him. He was terribly excited. He flew through the long grass and the stinging nettles, not caring whether he got stung or not, on his bare knees, and in the distance he could see Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker sitting in their chairs with their backs toward him. He swerved away from them so as to go around the other side of the house, but then suddenly, just as he was passing underneath the old peach tree that stood in the middle of the garden, his foot slipped and he fell flat on his face in the grass. The paper bag burst open as it hit the ground, and the thousands of tiny green things were scattered in all directions. James immediately picked himself up onto his hands and knees and started searching around for his precious treasures. But what was this? They were sinking into the soil. He could actually see them wriggling and twisting as they burrowed their way downward into the hard earth, and at once he reached out his hand to pick some of them up before it was too late, but they disappeared right under his fingers. He went after some others, and the same thing happened. He began scrabbling around frantically in an effort to catch hold of these that were left, but they were too quick for him. Each time the tip of his fingers were just about to touch them, they vanished into the earth. And soon, in the space of only a few seconds, every single one of them had gone. James felt like crying. He would never get them back now. They were lost, lost, lost forever. But where had they gone to? And why in the world had they been so eager to push down into the earth like that? What were they after? There was nothing down there. Nothing except the roots of the old peach tree and a whole lot of earthworms and centipedes and insects living in the soil. But what was it that old man had said? Whoever they meet first, be it bug, insect, animal, or tree, that will be the one who gets the full power of their magic. Good heavens, thought James. What's going to happen in that case if they do meet an earthworm or a centipede or a spider? And what if they do go into the roots of the peach tree? Look at James. Look at his eyes. There are the little things, and he's like, oh no, totally lost them. Get up at once, you lazy little beast, a voice was suddenly shouting at James' ear. James glanced up and saw Aunt Spiker standing over him, grim and tall and bony, glaring at him through her steel-rimmed spectacles. Get back over there immediately and finish chopping up those logs, she ordered. Aunt Sponge, fat and pulpy as a jellyfish, came waddling up behind her sister to see what was going on. Why don't we just lower the boy down the well in a bucket and leave him there for the night, she suggested. That ought to teach him not to laze around like this the whole day long. That's a very good wheeze, my dear Sponge, but let's make him finish chopping up the wood first. Be off with you at once, you hideous brat, and do some work. Slowly, sadly, poor James got up off the ground and went back to the woodpile. Oh, if only he hadn't slipped and fallen and dropped that precious bag. All hope of a happier life had gone completely now. Today and tomorrow and the next day and all the other days as well would be nothing but punishment and pain. unhappiness and despair. He picked up the chopper and was just about to start chopping away again when he heard a shout behind him that made him stop and turn. Chapter 6. Sponge, Sponge, come here at once and look at this. At what? It's a peach, Aunt Spiker was shouting. A what? A peach right up there in the highest branch. Can't you see it? I think you must be mistaken, my dear Spiker. That miserable tree never has any peaches on it. There's one on it now, Sponge. Look for yourself. And so there is really wiry, spindly Aunt Spiker with her spectacles resting all up on her nose on that clip. And then there is Aunt Sponge pointing as well. And there's James. And it looks like she's about to say something to James, but let's see what she has to say. You're teasing me, Spiker. You're making my mouth water on purpose when there's nothing to put into it. Why, that tree's never even had a blossom on it, let alone a peach. Right up on the highest branch, you say? I can't see a thing. Very funny, ha ha. Good gracious me. Well, I'll be blowed. There really is a peach up there. A nice big one, too, Aunt Spiker said. A beauty, Aunt Sponge cried out. At this point, James slowly put down his chopper and turned and looked across at the two women who were standing underneath the peach tree. Something is about to happen, he told himself. Something peculiar is about to happen any moment. He hadn't the faintest idea what it might be, but he could feel it in his bones that something was going to happen soon. He could feel it in the air around him, in the sudden stillness that had fallen upon the garden. James tiptoed a little closer to the tree. The ants were not talking now. They were just standing there, staring at the peach. There was not a sound anywhere, not even a breath of wind. And overhead the sun blazed down upon them out of a deep blue sky. It looks ripe to me, Aunt Spiker said, breathing in silence. Then why don't we eat it, Aunt Sponge suggested, licking her lips. We can have half each. Hey, you, James, come over here once and climb this tree. James came running over. I want you to pick that sponge up there on the highest branch, Aunt Sponge went on. Can you see it? Yes, Auntie Sponge, I can see it. Don't you dare eat any of it yourself. Your Aunt Spiker and I are going to have it between us right here and now. Half each. Get on up with you. Up you go. James crossed over to the tree trunk. Stop, Aunt Spiker said quickly. Hold everything. She was staring up into the branches with her mouth wide open and her eyes bulging as though she had seen a ghost. Look, she said. Look, Sponge, look. What's the matter with you? Aunt Sponge demanded. It's growing, Aunt Spiker cried. It's getting bigger and bigger. What is? The peach, of course. You're joking. Well, look for yourself. But my dear Spiker, that's perfectly ridiculous. That's impossible. That's... Now, wait. Just a minute. No, that can't be right. No. Yes. Great Scott, that thing really is growing. It's nearly twice as big already, Aunt Spiker shouted. It can't be true. It is true. It must be a miracle. Watch it, watch it. I am watching it. Good heavens alive, Aunt Spiker yelled. I can actually see the thing bulging and swelling before my very eyes. Chapter 7. The two women and the small boy stood absolutely still in the grass underneath the tree, gazing up at this extraordinary fruit. James's little face was glowing with excitement. His eyes were big and bright as two stars. He could see the peach swelling larger and larger, as clearly as if it were a balloon being blown up. In half a minute, it was the size of a melon. In another half minute, it was twice as big again. Just look at it growing, Aunt Spiker cried. Will it ever stop? Aunt Sponge shouted, waving her fat arms and starting to dance around in circles. And now it was so big it looked like an enormous butter-colored pumpkin dangling from the top of the tree. Get away from that tree trunk, you stupid boy, Aunt Spiker yelled. If the slightest shake and I'm sure it'll fall off. It must weigh 20 or 30 pounds at least. The branch that the peach was growing upon was beginning to bend over further and further because of the weight. Stand back, Aunt Sponge shouted. It's coming down. The branch is going to break. But the branch didn't break. It simply bent over more and more as the peach got heavier and heavier. And it still went on growing. In another minute, this mammoth fruit was as large and round, as fat as Aunt Sponge herself, and probably just as heavy. It has to stop now, Aunt Spiker yelled. It can't go on forever. But it didn't stop. Soon it was the size of a small car and reached halfway to the ground. Both ants were now hopping around and around the tree, clapping their hands and shouting all sorts of silly things in their excitement. Hallelujah, Aunt Spiker shouted. What a peach! What a peach! Terrifico, Aunt Sponge cried out. Magnifico! Splendifico! And what a meal! It's still growing. I know. As for James, he was so spellbound by the whole thing that he could only stand and stare and murmur quietly to himself. Oh, isn't it beautiful? The most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Shut up, you little twerp, Aunt Spiker snapped, happening to overhear him. It's none of your business. That's right, Aunt Sponge declared. It's got nothing to do with you whatsoever. Keep out of it. Look, Aunt Spiker shouted. It's growing faster than ever now. It's speeding up. See it, Spiker? I do. Bigger and bigger grew the peach, bigger and bigger and bigger. Then at last, when it had become nearly as tall as the tree that it was growing on, as tall and wide, in fact, as a small house, the bottom part of it gently touched the ground, and there it rested. You want to see a picture? Take a look at that big guy. And you can see Spindly Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker. Oh, I'm sorry. Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker underneath it. Freaking out. As I would too, I'm sure. It can't fall off now, Aunt Sponge shouted. It stopped growing, Aunt Spider cried. No, it hasn't. Yes, it has. It's slowing down, Spiker. It's slowing down, but it hasn't stopped yet. You watch it. There was a pause. It has now. I believe you're right. Do you think it would be safe to touch it? I don't know. We better be careful. Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker began walking slowly around the peach, inspecting it very cautiously from all sides. They were like a couple of hunters who had just shot an elephant and were not quite sure whether it was dead or alive. The massive round fruit towered over them so high that they looked like little midgets from another world beside it. The skin of the peach was very beautiful, a rich, buttery yellow with patches of brilliant pink and red. Aunt Sponge advanced cautiously and touched it with the tip of one finger. It's ripe, she cried. It's just perfect. Now see here, Spiker, why don't we go and get us a shovel right away and dig out a great big hunk of it for you and for me to eat? No, Aunt Spiker said. Not yet. Why ever not? Because I say so. But I can't wait to eat some, Aunt Sponge cried out. She was watering at the mouth now, and a thick trickle of spit was running down one side of her chin. Because it was a thin trickle of spit, I thought they were going to say drool, and so my eyes saw the word drool, but no, it was running down one side of her chin. My dear Sponge, Aunt Spiker said slowly, winking at her sister and smiling a sly, thin-lipped smile. There's a pile of money to be made out of this. If only we could handle it right. You wait and see. Chapter 8. The news that a peach almost as big as a house had suddenly appeared in someone's garden spread like wildfire across the countryside. And the next day, a stream of people came scrambling up the steep hill to gaze upon this marvel. Quickly, Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker called in carpenters and had them build a strong fence around the peach to save it from the crowd. And at the same time, these two crafty women stationed themselves at the front gate with a large bunch of tickets and started charging everyone for coming in. Roll up, Aunt Spiker yelled. Only 1 shilling to see the great giant peach. Half price for children under 6 weeks old, Aunt Sponge shouted. One at a time, please. Don't push. You're all going to get in. Hey, you, come back there. You haven't paid. By lunchtime, the whole place was a seething mass of men, women, and children all pushing and shoving to get a glimpse of this miraculous fruit. Helicopters were landing like wasps all over the hill, and out of them poured swarms of newspaper reporters, cameramen, and men from the television companies. Let's see a picture of all of that. So you can't really see much, because you can't see the peach at all, but you do see the helicopters, you see that fence, you see Spiker and Sponge and all of the people kind of clamoring to pay for tickets to go in to see the giant peach. It'll cost you double to bring in a camera, Aunt Spiker shouted. All right, they answered. We don't care. And the money came rolling into the pockets of the two greedy ants. But while all this excitement was going on outside, poor James was forced to stay locked in his bedroom, peeping through the bars of his window at the crowds below. The disgusting little brute will only get in everyone's way if we let him wander about, Aunt Spiker had said early that morning. Oh, please, he had begged. I haven't met any other children for years and years, and there are going to be lots of them down there for me to play with, and perhaps I could help you with the tickets. Cut it out, Aunt Sponge snapped. Your Aunt Spiker and I are about to become millionaires, and the last thing we want is the likes of you messing things up and getting in the way. Later, when the evening of the first day came and the people had all gone home, the ants unlocked James's door and ordered him to go outside and pick up all the banana skins and orange peels and bits of paper that the crowd had left behind. Could I please have something to eat first? He asked. I haven't had a thing all day. No, they shouted, kicking him out the door. We're too busy to make food. We are counting our money. But it's dark, cried James. Get out, they yelled, and stay out until you've cleaned up all the mess. The door turned. The key turned in the lock. Let me check to see how long chapter 9 is. Oh, it's not long at all. Okay, last chapter, chapter 9. Hungry and trembling, James stood alone out in the open, wondering what to do. The night was all around him now, and high overhead, a wild white moon was riding in the sky. There was not a sound, not a movement anywhere. Most people, and especially small children, are often quite scared of being outdoors alone in the moonlight. Everything is so deadly quiet, and the shadows are so long and black, and they keep turning into strange shapes that seem to move as you look at them, and the slightest little snap of a twig makes you jump. James felt exactly like that now. He stared straight ahead with the large, frightened eyes, hardly daring to breathe. Not far away, in the middle of the garden, he could see the giant peach towering over everything else. Surely it was even bigger tonight than ever before. And what a dazzling sight it was. The moonlight was shining and glinting on its great curving sides, turning them into crystal and silver. It looked like a tremendous silver ball lying there in the grass, silently, mysterious, and wonderful. And then, all at once, little shivers of excitement started running all over the skin on James's back. Something else, he told himself. Something stranger than ever this time is about to happen to me again soon. He was sure of it. He could see it coming. He looked around him, wondering what on earth it was going to be. The garden lay soft and silver in the moonlight. The grass was wet with dew, and a million dewdrops were sparkling and twinkling like diamonds around his feet. And now, suddenly, the whole place, the whole garden, seemed to be alive with magic. Almost without knowing what he was doing, as though drawn by some powerful magnet, James Henry Trotter started walking slowly toward the giant peach. He climbed over the fence that surrounded it and stood directly beneath it, staring up at its great bulging sides. He put out a hand and touched it gently with the tip of one finger. It felt soft and warm and slightly furry like the skin of a baby mouse. He moved a step closer and rubbed his cheek lightly against the soft skin. And then suddenly, while he was doing this, he happened to notice that right beside him and below him, close to the ground, there was a hole in the side of the peach. So here is the big peach. And you can see, look how teeny tiny James is. So look at how huge that peach grew. And you can even compare it to the moon. So there's the moon. There's the big, huge peach. And then there's James. I don't see the hole. Maybe it's behind it. Maybe something like the other side. that was the end of chapter 9. So, whew, huge chapters. What would you have done if you saw a peach like that? Would you have said something to Sponge and Spiker? Would you be too afraid? I think I'd probably be too afraid. They seem horrible, horrible people. Tomorrow, chapter 10 through 15. All right. See you soon, my loves. Have a great day. Get outside. Some fresh air. Stop driving your parents crazy. Okay. Mwah. Love you. Bye.